Today on the podcast, we're talking about how to throw the best shows for your fans so that they tell their friends and they keep coming back for more. Let's make it fun for them, guys. We'll see you on the inside. How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Songwriters podcast. This is Mike, creator and designer of the Songwriters Planner, and I really appreciate you guys swinging by today. We're going to be talking about a few things that artists can do, bands can do, to make your shows and your live gigs fun for your fans or more enjoyable for them so that they keep coming back and they tell their friends and you get a bigger, better following over a period of time, faster actually, by making your shows more convenient for your fans. The reason why I wanted to talk about this today, and if you are a band or if you're an artist and you're gigging out on a regular basis, or if you guys are out there and you're planning a CD release show or you have a big show coming up that you want to prepare for, today's podcast, we're going to talk about the things that you should keep in mind when it comes to your fans. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about this today is because when we plan shows as artists, we usually plan them around us because we are the centerpiece, right? We want to play the venue that we want to play. We want to have the crowds that we want to see. We want to do the things that we want as a band or a live playing musician. And that, I get that. That's totally makes sense to me. I've done that a million times. I've been in many bands where we've planned CD release shows or had a big show coming up and we wanted to make it as big as possible. However, sometimes when we start having these grandeur ideas about our show and our gig, we kind of lose focus on what makes a show important for the people that are coming to it. So the fans, the people who support you, sometimes it's kind of easy to lose focus. Well, what would they want? You know, obviously the thing that they will want is a good performance, a fun performance out of you. That's a given. But there are other things that we can keep in mind when we're planning our shows and making our big plans to make it fun for them, to make it enjoyable for them so that they remember, wow, the last time I went to your show or saw you live and saw you play out there, I had a great time because of this. Whatever reasons we're going to talk about today. And I've read online and I read a lot of blogs, a lot of music blogs, and they always talk about how to throw the best shows and stuff like that from a band's perspective. But what I'm talking about today is from the concert goer's perspective or the fan's perspective, which may be a little bit different than the actual artist that's playing the show. I'd love to talk about that story. I don't know if you guys ever heard back in the day, Guns N' Roses was notorious for playing shows and just be and they would take forever to get on stage. Axl would just take forever to get on stage for whatever reason. Who knows why? You know, maybe it was by that time they were so huge he could take as long as you want. Waiting for someone to get on stage, no matter what level you're at, is not a good idea. See, that's one of those things where you would look at that and go, wow, their band is being really selfish. We're waiting out here. We've been waiting out here for an hour and they're still not on stage. So see, that's kind of an example of, from the fans' perspective, it kind of sucks that the show is that would be one aspect of a show where you're not keeping your fans in mind. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about today, and hopefully after you listen to this podcast, you'll walk away with at least one good idea to keep when you're thinking about your shows. Just at least one thing, or you may think of your own ideas that may make your shows fun for your fans, that you can hit me up on the comments and let me know, because this is an ever-growing list. I mean, we're just going to go over a few things here today, but there are tons of things that you can be doing to make the shows more enjoyable for your fans. And it also really comes down to what kind of fan base you have. Obviously, if you play certain styles of music, you're going to probably have certain types of crowds who like certain things or who enjoy other things. So it really comes down to your fan base. What kind of fans are they? And you will have to kind of evaluate that for yourself, because, you know, if you're playing an underground goth metal band, you're going to have different fans than if you're doing more of a solo acoustic artist thing. There's a big difference there, obviously. So just keeping in mind what you think your fans would enjoy, and then that would be something that you can start making your own list on. Okay. All right, so why don't we go ahead and jump into this list? I kind of wanted to just make this a quick podcast this week. We'll see how quick it is. I try to stay under at least 30 minutes and just try to nail these out for you guys so you can take this information and use it for yourself, okay? All right, let's jump into it. So the first thing you want to keep in mind is the venue. Where are you playing your show? Where are you going to have this great show, this album release, this EP release, or just a big show? You're just planning a big show. And the reason why I say venue is because some venues, or I should say this, not all venues are created equally. And if you've been in bands and playing out for a while, you know this. Every place is different, from the facilities to the people that work there, to the management, to the location, to the reputation. I mean, all these things you have to take into consideration. Now, since we're looking at the venue from the fans' perspective, what would make it easier for them, you want to pick a venue that is at least centralized to where you usually play out. Even if someplace farther away looks better and it's enticing, remember, you're keeping your fans in mind. Now, they have to travel to your show. So you want to try and pick some place that is at least centralized to where you usually play, to where they usually see you play. And then there's no surprises. They're like, okay, you're playing at that club that you play at all the time, or you're in a location that makes it easy for them to get to. Now, that's kind of a hard thing to say because you may have fans all over town, and if you do, that is awesome. You're doing a good job. Keep it up. But I think with planning your venues and planning your shows, you want to make sure that you keep it centralized, keep it accessible so that your fans kind of know where to go. Okay, venue is really important. You also want to pick, obviously, a venue that is friendly, or I'd say friendly, accessible to your fans, not a place that has, say, a bad reputation for treating its customers. The bar staff is great. If they have service, the service is great. The security is thoughtful of the patrons. I know that sometimes it's hard to get to that kind of a club, because like I was saying, every club is different, but you want to at least find a place that are a venue that services customers or has a good reputation, because some of your fans might have not ever been to this place that you're going to play. Okay, this may be the first time they ever see you play at a new venue. So try to pick a place that they're going to enjoy going to as well. And, it'll just help the overall experience of them remembering how that show went for you, and they'll be more enticed to tell their friends about it and give you 5-star reviews on Yelp. But so that those are some things to keep in mind when you're talking about the venue. Okay, it's super important. The venue is probably the number one thing to lock down when you're trying to book a show or make the show fun for your fans. So keep those things in mind. All right. Next one. Let's talk about the lineup for the night. And when I say the lineup, are you going to have any other artists, acts, or bands on your show that night? Usually most bands and artists will stack up opening acts or stack up, similar artists to them to open up for them, say 2 to 3 bands in the beginning. Who are you going to have on your lineup, okay? Why is that so important? Well, for obvious reasons, you want to book bands on your show that are going to be somewhat similar to you, at least some kind of vibe, or at least they don't have to sound like you, but sonically, vibe-wise, you want to have an artist and bands that are kind of support what you do, and there are a ton of bands in town, or artists that play music in your city most likely, and you probably know a lot of them. Who would you have open up for you on your big show? Who would you play with, and who would you open up for on their big show? This is so important because from your fans' perspective, they are going to watch these other artists too, and they are going to remember who they are, or at least how they felt when they watch these artists before they see you. And you want to make sure that they have a great time and that the bands and the artists that are playing with you support your cause and support you and kind of the same mentality, because it's really a big turnoff when you go see a show and the opening acts or the supporting bands are just completely different from the artists that they came to see, or they're just terrible or have a bad experience. It's just kind of disruptive to the flow of the evening. And most booking managers, most club owners will try to book bands that sound somewhat similar or have the same vibe anyway. For you, you're going to have to think about that same scenario. So make sure you got great artists that support you, artists that you trust will take care of your crowd while you're not on stage. Think about it that way. Artists that will, support you and your cause, and when you get on stage, the audience is warmed up. They've had a great time with the opening acts, and they're ready to see you. That's something to think about, okay? So the lineup, that's another thing to keep in mind. Get that tight lineup going and make sure that they support what you got going on, okay? All right, let's jump into the next one. The time slot of when you play. The time slot really matters a lot to your fans, okay? And I'm going to go into a couple reasons why. So let's say you got your big show booked, you got everything ready to go, and I'm guessing most venues they will play from like 9 to bar closes or something like that. If you're in a band or that kind of a thing. If you play during the day, or if you do more of like the acoustic coffee house thing, then the hours might be different. So when you play matters a lot, because your crowd, your fan base, from their perspective, again, they'll want to know when you play, because they're coming to see you. And if you don't, if you go on at 11 o'clock at night and your fans get there at 8, they're waiting around for a couple hours just to see you. They're spending their money, and they're standing around, which is great. But if they came to see you, it's good to let them know when you're going to be playing, so that they can maybe go somewhere else and come back, or expect to see the opening acts, the other bands, and let them know what to expect there. But being mindful of your time slot and letting your fans know is super important. And I think that this gets overlooked all the time. Bands usually don't say exactly when they're going to be playing, because the whole mindset of, well, if I don't tell my fans when we're playing, then guess what? They're all going to get there early, and they're all going to watch all the other bands, and then they're going to be so excited when I get on stage. Okay, wrong. That is the wrong mentality to have. You want to let your fans know exactly when you play. So let them decide what they want to do. Let them decide whether they're going to get there early to see the opening acts, or if they're going to get there right when they're expecting you to play. Okay, let them decide what's going on, and don't let them guess about when you're going to play. And when they get to the club too early and they find out you're not going on until later, it's kind of a buzzkill. So respect your fans' time. Let them know when you're playing, and let them decide. Another aspect of time slot is, if this is your show that you're booking, or you're creating a show for yourself, and you're getting all the other artists and the acts on the bill, is it in your best interest to play last? What time does last? When is that? Sometimes playing last means going on after midnight. And to a lot of fans, that is kind of late. I hate to say it. It really depends on your demographic. Again, it goes back to the demographic of your fans. Are your fans a younger crowd? Because the younger crowd will usually stay out longer, and seeing a show past midnight is no big deal. I get that. If your crowd is a little bit on the older side, then you're probably going to be wanting to play your set a little bit earlier in the night, say around the 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock slot. It just works that way. That's the way it goes. So you really kind of have to evaluate your crowd and know what time slot works best for them. And again, give courtesy to your fans and let them know when that's going to be. I've found that over the years in playing bands, going on last isn't always the best idea. It's nice to say that you're headlining a gig and you're going on last, but the reality is your fans and everybody's been there all night, and by the time you go on, you get a burst of energy, but the crowd is, it's hard to keep crowds in the venues towards the middle to end of your set, just because it's so late. And if that's what your crowd is built for, then that's better. Then do that. So, but what I've found over the years is that going on either, second to last or third to last is like that sweet spot. And if this is your show and you want the best crowd there of your fans, that's usually like the best time to do it. But then again, everybody's different. Every band is different. Every crowd is different. And you have to really evaluate what you think they will want. Again, this is about coming at it from their point of view. So time slot, good to think about. Put some thought into that about when you think you might want to play. And you'll have a happier crowd, a more in tune crowd, because you are playing when it's best for them. Okay? All right, let's keep going. We got a couple other things. Let's talk about the ticketing or the affordability of your show. That is obviously something that you want to think about for your fans. What are you, and also what are you selling there, your merch? Basically, how much money are you expecting each fan to pay when they come see your show? And this includes if there is an entrance fee, a ticket, how much are your shirts, how much are your merchandise, how much money are you expecting them to pay? I've seen many times where bands will just gouge their fans, and they'll just expect them to pay a certain amount of money. I am of the mindset of keeping things cheaper and more affordable will keep your fans happy. You'll have happier fans that way. You may not be making as much money, but it's, at this level of the game, it's not about making thousands and thousands of dollars. I hate to say it. It's not. It's about growing a fan base, and those are two different things, okay? And if you want to grow your fan base and have happy fans, you have to cater to them. So when you book the show, when you choose the venue, you're going to have to work with whoever the manager is of the venue. What are they doing? Are they charging a cover at the door? And if so, is there a way that you can is there a percentage deal? What's going on there? Is it a split deal, or do you get the full amount at the door and then they just make sales off the bar? Whatever the situation is, you got to figure it out. And then once you have all those parameters, those variables figured out, then you decide, okay, how much am I going to expect my fans to pay to come see my show? Now, we're not talking even about drink sales or anything like that, because that's really you have no control over that. I mean, you may be able to pull some kind of drink specials with the bar, which is great. Sometimes they do that. But outside of that, how much are your fans going to pay? And try to get that number down to a price that you would pay. Ask yourself, how much would I pay to go see one of my favorite bands? Sometimes it's easy for us to lose track, like how much we would actually pay as opposed to how much we're expecting our fans to pay us. Sometimes we can get into, it's easy to lose that perspective on how that works, because we're all fans, we're all fans of bands too. I am too. And how much would I pay to go see a band? Sometimes it's just not worth it. And I know that a lot of bands are thinking that they have their fans' best interest in mind, but they don't, So you wanna keep on track with your fans, keep in tune with them, and just don't gouge them. You don't want to gouge your fans, but respect the fact that they have to pay money to come see you, and try to get that dollar amount to something that is easy for them to digest. Okay, because they're going to be spending money that night anyway, and the more money you can save your fan, the better that they will enjoy their time with you. And again, it just all comes around to how can you make this the best experience for your fans. Okay, so affordability, that is the one thing you want to also keep in mind. And the last thing we're going to look at today is going to be put on a good show. Yes, that's the mother lode right there. Of course, that is the one thing that you have complete control over. Put on a good show. And For you, that may mean one thing. For another artist, that may mean another thing. But there are some things you can do as bands and artists to make sure that you put in a lot of energy and you make it fun for them. You got lighting. Maybe you need some extra lighting. Maybe you need some extra sound. Maybe you need some extra help, like some stage props or something like that, or you're doing cool effects on stage, or you got just making it fun for them so that they remember how great you sounded and what they saw on stage. This is probably, the thing that we as artists always dream about, putting together a great show and just making it memorable, having flying unicorns and pink elephants and all that stuff going across stage, making us look amazing as artists. This is the time you do it. You do it this time. And if you're going to have a lot of energy on stage, then that is the best thing you can do. Also, keeping in mind that if you are doing the extra lighting, the extra effects, or extra props, make sure you kind of do a dress rehearsal beforehand, because sometimes when you do things like that, it takes longer to implement on stage than you think it does. And if you have times where you're trying to set up and you're trying to get set up and go on stage and there's so many things to do, it takes longer and your fans are standing around waiting for you. Make sure you know how much time it's going to take you to get set up, and if you need to get extra help to help you, please set that up, and it'll just make the night and your show more enjoyable for the people who are going to see it, and you're going to put on a better show. Okay, so these are all those things that you want to do. Make sure you have good energy. Make sure you got all your props and everything lined up. Make sure you have, if you're going to do extra lighting, make sure you got that dialed in. Talk to your lighting guy before you play. Get there early. Talk to your sound guy before you play. Get there early. And dial in all the details beforehand, way beforehand. Because if you're doing it as you're trying to get up on stage and play, it can just easily turn into a disaster. And I've seen that happen so many times. Bands just take forever to play, or they're on stage and they didn't have something wired in or dialed in yet. And in between songs, it just turns into a hassle. So it's super, super important that you make sure your live show is killer, works like a well-oiled machine, and you've thought through as many sequences of problems that you think you could have before you get there on stage. Okay. So those are the things that I wanted to talk today. I believe there were 5. Let me check my list here. 5 things that you can do to make your shows better for your fans. Now, again, this is something that I really feel is important, and I think gets overlooked, because when we, like I was saying earlier, we just want to throw that big show and want to look awesome, and we just deal with it from our perspective. And we lose track of what would make it fun for the fans, which is probably more important than anything, because without them, you're not going to have anybody at your shows. So definitely keep that in mind, and use these techniques and these tips, or some of your own, for the big shows, the ones where you have your album release. You don't have to do this for every single show. If you play out a lot, and I know a lot of you do, some of these things may not apply to you, especially say if you're doing like if you're a full-time musician, you're working full-time. Some of these things probably won't apply, but if you're doing a CD release show, or you're doing a center point show, a pillar show, something that is you're really putting a lot of work into, definitely keep these things in mind. Keep your fans in mind, and remember that they are the most important thing over your music. And sometimes even they're more important than that, because without them, you'd be playing in front of nobody. We don't like that, right? So, and that is it, guys. I wanted to talk about that today. That is today's podcast. I hope it brings you some value. I hope you found a couple things useful in here. And if you have, or if you haven't, please let me know in the comments. You can email me at any time, songwritersplanner.com. My name is Mike. You can definitely get me directly. You're going to email me. It's going to come to me, and I will get right back to you. Or just feel free to hit me up on Facebook. Shoot me a comment, whatever way. I'm all over the place. You got many ways to get to me. Okay? All right, people. Thanks again. We will see you on the next episode. I appreciate you coming out to this one, and we'll talk soon. Peace and love.